Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So Poppy has finally been reworked, and I feel like a lot of people, especially now that she's on the live server, aren't really 100% sure on how to play her. Now whether we're talking about items and builds, or we're talking about runes masteries, maybe just even in general how to use her abilities and in what order. So hopefully this video will take care of all those questions. If you end up enjoying this video for whatever reason, please definitely hit that like button to show your support. But let's not waste any more time and move right into this Poppy guide. So let us first start things off by talking about some tips when it comes to laning with Poppy, particularly in the top lane. So of the two roles I think she should be played in, being top and jungle, I personally enjoy top a lot more, but jungling is also quite strong. But here are some really important things to remember with top lane Poppy. So the first and foremost, her passive is great when it comes to trading. Without question, it has solid base damage, and really it is your only ranged ability. So in my opinion, try to abuse this passive by hitting the enemy champion more often than using it on minions, unless you are being zoned out or you need a very quick and fast shield without any issues. So one really cool thing you can do is when the enemy minion caster, for instance, is low on HP, you can actually stand beside those enemy casters and zone out the person you're laning against, because whenever they come in for the trade or the CS, you can get the instant shield by attacking that one low HP minion, and it'll instantly help you win the trade because of the shield you just gained. But speaking of her passive, you can also bait out situations by throwing the passive on either the opponent or a minion, letting the shield drop on the ground, hopefully beside a wall, and bait the opponent thinking that they can freely walk over and destroy your shield, but in turn you just simply use your E ability on them to stun them against the wall and use your full combo. So speaking of combos and abilities, how do you want to really utilize her kit? Well, against a melee champion, because that's usually the easiest matchup, what you usually want to do is whenever they go in for a CS, you want to use your Q ability. It provides that nice little slow, use your auto attack, and then the second Q will also hit them, and from that you'll proc your Thunderlords and you'll do a lot of trade damage while they just only got one CS. If you're ahead in the lane and you have a huge wave getting pushed into the enemy tower, you can use your ultimate to knock them away from the lane to make them miss a lot of experience and CS. And here in this fight with Illaoi is a really great use of her ultimate, where you can just simply press the R button and knocks them up in place instead of knocking them away, and then I position her in such a way that as she lands, it sets up a perfect E ability into the wall for the stun, followed by a Q. But next, let's go over some jungling tips in case you decide to take this hammer wielding Yordle into the forest, because she is actually quite strong there as well, so you wouldn't be wrong in doing so. So the first thing is to note that whenever you're doing the camps, do not stack your E stun and your passive shield. Make sure to use your stun first and then pick up the shield for the obviously shield, or vice versa, pick up the shield first from your passive and then once that wears off, use your stun. You want to be able to deny from the camps as much damage as possible, and this is the best way to do it. But another tip when jungling is also using your Q ability with the slow to kite the jungle monster so that you take as less damage as possible, while of course waiting for your other abilities like your passive or your E to reset so that you can further deny damage from the jungle monsters. A fantastic thing to do when counter jungling is, of course, assuming you know it's coming, you want to wait in a bush, or even if you come to the party late, you can essentially use your ultimate, knock away one of the two enemy champions, and then make it a 1 versus 2. A typical gank can look something like this. You use W for the move speed as you're walking into the lane, use your E ability for the stun if possible, or at least E them towards your allies so that they can put on damage as well. Q forward so that they have to walk through your Q while they're running away, of course auto attack in between, and then use your ultimate for the knock up straight up in the air where you just tap the R button and then rinse and repeat. If possible, you want to save your W when you're on top of the enemy champion, assuming they have a dashing escape type ability to of course prevent it with the W. So those are the specific lane tips and tricks I have written down based on playing Poppy several games in a row. But let's talk about more tips regarding Poppy, just playing her in general, maybe mid to late game. So one thing I want to say with the W, though I feel like it is somewhat obvious, but just in case, is that not only does your W not allow people to use a dashing ability while they're within your W, but it doesn't let people use a dashing ability into your W from outside. Definitely don't forget that. But one of the best things to do with Poppy is that you can simply press the R button and let it go instantly for your ultimate to knock up the target in the same spot that they were initially at, similar to like an Alistar Q. It seems like most people think the Poppy ultimate is is only used to knock people really far away, when in turn it can actually be used for quite the opposite, just for the damage, just the CC itself, and to reset your abilities. One of the best things to do with Poppy that's really important as well, since she doesn't really have a whole lot to stick onto her target or engage as well as maybe many other champions, is to use your passive where you throw the shield with Deadman's Plate and Iceborne Gauntlet. This will provide a heavy slow on the target, but make sure to activate your W before you throw your passive to proc the Iceborne Gauntlet as well. As you slow the target down, you can catch up to them, use your E ability, and then tap the R button to knock them up in place, and then your team can engage, and there you go, a perfect engage. So let's talk a bit more about her ultimate. Other than what I have already mentioned, her ultimate is amazing when it comes to doing objectives and you want to stop the enemy team from doing them. So for instance, if they're all at Baron Pit or the Dragon Pit, use your ultimate, knock as many of them away as possible, and then your team can simply follow up for the engage and potentially even take the objective. However, on the flip side, you can also do the exact same thing to the enemy team whenever you are doing the Dragon or Baron, knocking them away and ensuring that you and your team will finish off the objective without any issues. Another thing I've noticed that is really interesting to me is the fact that Poppy's passive, the shield throw, will actually count as an auto attack resetter, so you can walk up to the target in melee range, throw the shield, and then instantly you can auto attack them with your regular auto attack right after. So later on when we talk about masteries, you'll realize that even on Poppy I still take Thunderlords because it really is just simply a very strong mastery trait. However, her E ability will count as 2 stacks towards her Thunderlords if you get the stun. So let's very quickly talk about what exactly are Poppy's strengths. What does she excel at? Well, her kit first of all works together very well, and she doesn't rely on winning the lane because she has so much CC and disruption that it doesn't really matter how strong you are as long as you are doing your job in the backline or protecting your backline. Regardless of how fed you are or how much you are feeding, her ultimate will always serve the same purpose, whether it's setting up a gank, setting it up for your team to engage, or knocking them away from an objective or just to disengage. Her W is a flat out counter to several champions like Lucian and Lee Sin. She has a decent engage like I mentioned earlier with the Iceborne and Deadman's with your passive for the slow, engage with the E, and then use your ultimate to knock up the target in the exact same place and let your team simply engage. The weaknesses of Poppy, however, I feel like is that her passive late game will not be doing as much damage as it might be in the laning phase or somewhere around mid game, but it'll still be quite strong. It really just depends on what kind of build you're doing on her. Her ultimate obviously will sometimes save the enemy team if you misuse it. The range on her Q sometimes feels very underwhelming to the point where you almost have to land another ability like your E in order for your Q to really do anything. Sticking on a target definitely can be a little difficult at times, which is where Iceborne Gauntlet comes in handy. And overall, her ultimate is not the hardest thing in the world to dodge, considering you see her channeling and winding it up for a few seconds. So what abilities do you max out on Poppy? Now this should be more or less self-explanatory, so I'm not going to waste too much time, but you want to max Q first and then your E, followed by W and ultimate whenever possible. So let's talk about the actual item builds and runes and masteries next. So first, starting things off with the runes and masteries. So regardless of whether I'm jungling or playing top, I've actually found that these masteries and these runes have worked for me for the majority of the games. One thing you can change with the runes is either maybe add some attack speed if you're jungling if you want, or switch out the reds with armor pen instead. But this honestly has been working out for me personally, so at least try this out, and if it doesn't work for you or you want to make some adjustments after that, feel free to do so. I still take Thunderlords even on jungle Poppy because the mastery is just simply way too overpowered at the moment to not take it. If it ends up getting nerfed, I will probably instead start taking Grasp of the Undying or Bond of Stone. So let's talk about items for top lane Poppy. So for each one, top and jungle, I'll have 2 different builds, and the first one for top lane being the standard build that I think is the most popular and probably overall just the best. So you can either start off with the longsword and potions if you feel like you want to be aggressive, or if you want to play the sustained and safe game, go for the corruption potion. But the core items are without question Black Cleaver, some sort of boots, whether it's defensive boots like Merc boots, offensive boots like maybe Swiftness, or even armor boots. Deadman's Plate is absolutely fantastic on her as well, and the Iceborne Gauntlet is also very strong for the sheen effect and the extra slow and stick potential. Another item I would highly recommend also picking up would definitely be the Randuin's Omen, Sterak's Gauge, and also the Maw of Malmortius. So this just works the best on Poppy, gives her everything she needs, gives her the tanky stats that she needs as well to be a disruptor, works with her passive and her W passive, and overall just fits her playstyle very well. But let's be honest, that's the boring build build. That's the Snooze Fest build. We wanted something more exciting, so you guys know I always like thinking of things like that. So here you go, boys and girls, the Poppy Assassin laning build. This is personally my favorite build to do because it just fits my playstyle and it really is a lot of fun. So you get the Youmuu's, the Boots of Swiftness, to help you kite around and be a lot more mobile to land those E's even better. Follow it up with the Triforce for the Sheen effect for the Phage and even the Zeal, Deadman's Plate because it's Deadman's Plate, and Steric's Gauge to make your Sheen effect from Triforce that much more deadly. Maw of Malmortius is also another fantastic buy for this build. But following that, we have the jungle builds, with the first one being just a flat out tanky build. So the talisman and potion starting items shouldn't be too much of an issue or question as to why, but the core items you go for the Cinder Hulk. I personally like the Boots of Mobility to help me gank more often, but you can definitely swap those out instantly for whatever other boots you desire. Deadman's Plate because it's Deadman's Plate once again, and then Black Cleaver with the Gauntlet for the 40% CDR, and just overall the stats that you really need in this build. Again, this is just going for pure tanky stats, so you want to just more or less get items that give you more and more HP, and the core and the point of this build is just to be a tanky disruptor. But if you're feeling lucky and you want to go for some damage in the jungle, go for the Warrior enchant instead of the Cinder Hulk, but other than that, it's more or less the same build. So my final thoughts on Poppy, just how strong or how overpowered is this champion? Well, I gave her a nice solid rating of 7 out of 10. She's definitely not overpowered, but she's not underpowered. She's very balanced and overall a solid rework by Riot. She does fulfill her role of being a decent duelist early to mid game and then transitioning into just a simple tank and disruptor. Her W is an amazing ability that I have never seen before in League of Legends, and her ultimate, again, another ability we've never seen that just has so many possibilities. However, Poppy, I've noticed is that it's a little difficult to carry with her unless you go pure damage, and even then it's still somewhat difficult, so you will have to rely on your team. Sticking onto a target can be somewhat difficult as well. Her passive, especially if you go the Assassin build, is not going to scale super well, but it is very strong early to mid game. And if you lane against a ranged opponent top lane, well, good luck to you. But that is about it for this video, boys and girls. If you did enjoy this video or learn something new, please hit that like button to support me. Make sure to share this video with your friends if anyone else is wondering on what to do with Poppy and how to play her, or just they want to find out some more tips and tricks. Make sure to check out my other videos and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll definitely see you for the next one. Peace.